Hey everybody, St. Godric here, and today we're talking about what you should do if you feel someone is not taking your hits while you're playing a LARP. So the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you know the rules of the game that you are playing. See, sometimes there's a lot of confusion on if someone's taking a hit or not because one of the two people don't understand the rules of the game. For instance, if you're playing Dagorhir, there is what's called a sufficient force rule, where you have to hit someone hard enough that if it were a real weapon, it would actually hurt the arm. Compared to like Amtgard, where it can be a little bit lighter, but in Amtgard it has to deflect or make a noise for it to count. So each game is going to have a little bit different of a rule set, so you got to make sure that you understand what game you're playing and how the rules work for that particular game. So if you're fighting somebody and they are not taking their shots, or you feel like maybe they're cheating you or something like that, you have a few different options. I'm going to start this video off by saying sometimes you will hear people say that if they're not taking your shots, go pick up a heavier weapon, come out to the field, hit them 300 times harder, and eventually they will take those shots. I am not going to advocate for that. I think if you get in the mindset where you walk out on the field and say, I'm going to hurt this person, you need to take a step back. You need to sit down for a little bit. I think there definitely is something to putting a little bit more zing on your shots, but if you're walking out with the mindset of, I am going to make this guy take this shot, you probably need to sit down for a few minutes. So some things to consider if you're fighting with somebody and you feel like they are not taking the shots that they should. Sometimes it's going to happen to where you think you hit them and the shot just wasn't good. Maybe it just didn't hit on the right spot, or it didn't even hit at all. Sometimes maybe you felt you got a stab and it hit their pommel instead of hitting them, something like that. So something to consider is sometimes your shot actually didn't hit even though you think it did. Some other times you'll hit something, but it wasn't hard enough. Maybe again it deflects off of a shield, or you hit them, but within the rules of the game that you're playing, it doesn't quite hit hard enough. And then sometimes there is this, it does happen where the person just doesn't take a valid shot. I think this doesn't happen all that often, even though we like to think that it does. Sometimes we call this sloughing, like they're sloughing off a shot, they're cheating in some way. And I have found that most of the time when people don't take shots like this, it's because they don't know any better. Sometimes if you're fighting newer fighters and you hit them 2 or 3 times, especially if you go from like one shoulder to a hip or something like that, you get to the point where they can't really process what's going on. It takes them a few seconds to really call their shots. They don't have the shot computer that veteran players do. So sometimes if someone's not taking their shot, they might just be new and not really know what's going on. And then sometimes there are those times where you hit somebody and they're just cheating. Every game has them. We try and eliminate them, but that is sometimes that does happen. So what should you do if you think someone is not taking your shots? I think the first thing that you can do is make sure that your shots are clean, that you understand the rules that you're playing by, follow those rules, and make sure your shots are actually where you need them to be. Something else that you can do is then ask the person, hey, where'd that hit? Right, I'll do that a lot of times in fights. We'll be fighting and I'll be like, hey, what did that one up on the shoulder hit? Did that make contact? Get them, even if it gets them thinking about what's going on. And then if it gets really, really bad, you can go to your Reeve or your Herald, the person running the game, and say, hey, can you keep an eye on this guy? I don't think this is working how it's supposed to. And then they can keep an eye there. Something that I always try and do, if I'm fighting somebody and I hit them once and they don't take it, my second time I do it, I'll put a little bit more muscle into it, try and make sure that I know what I'm doing, I hit them where I want it to go. If they still don't take it on the second one, on the third go around, I'm going to try and embarrass them a bit. I'm going to throw some flair in there. Generally, I'm going to spin them, or I might go like over the head onto the shoulder. I am going to try and make it to where they and everyone else watching cannot deny that the shot hit. Because sometimes the cheaters, or even if it's an unintentional, if they're just in it for the moment, there's some ego going on. People don't really understand it all that often, but maybe there's someone they're trying to impress. That someone might be on the sideline, that someone might be you, especially if you're a good fighter. They might be trying to impress you, and so in doing so, they're not even really paying attention to their shots. Sometimes there's a little bit of an ego in there, and they're trying to impress themselves, or they might be trying to get in with a fighting company or a fighting unit, and they're trying to impress someone on the field for that. And so if that's the case, and I feel like that's the case, I'll always try and throw some flair in there at the end. Whether it's a spin or something else. So let me give you an example. Okay, a few weeks ago I was out at an event. I went up and I was fighting this guy, and I line up against him. I throw a feint low, and I go up over, and I clip him on his board side shoulder. I thought it was clean. I thought it was a hard enough shot. It had sufficient force. It was a good shot, I felt. He looked at it, and then looked at me and said, light. I said, okay, you know, I didn't agree, but you know, you gotta keep fighting. So I do the same shot again, and I feint real hard down, and his board comes even lower than what it did the first time. And I take a big step in this time, and instead of just going for the shoulder, like just a little bit, I take a full step and I go up and over, and I lay my whole sword on his back. And then I'm like, okay, cool, I won. So I go fight the next person, and he hits me on the back twice. And I turn around and I go, was that not good? He goes, no, that was light. So I walk back to my spawn, I kind of roll my eyes, you know, and I grab the herald. I say, hey, can you watch this guy? I don't think he's taking his shots very well. Herald was very kind about it, said absolutely will. So I walk up to this guy for the third time, and I walk up, I square up, and I straight hip scoop spin around to the back, hit him good in the hip, and then popped him twice in the back, and then I walked on. And after that, I didn't have any issue with him for the rest of the day. See, when you feel like someone's cheating you, you've got a couple of options. You can throw a fit, you can get real mad, you can assume the worst in the person, that they're cheating instead of they just don't know what's going on or something like that. Or you can take it on you, on the things that you can control, and I'm going to make sure my shots are cleaner. I'm going to make sure my hit location is where I need it to be. I'm going to grab the Reeve and the Herald and make sure that everything's going on how it's supposed to be going on. So you can let a sluffer, you can let someone who's not taking your shots ruin your entire day. If you're in a tournament and in that first bracket of the tournament you feel like someone's sluffing you and you let that get in your mind, that can ruin your entire tournament. Or you can take the factors that you can control, change those factors, and still go and have fun with it. So just kind of to recap, there's going to be people who don't take their hits. Sometimes we call this sluffing. Sometimes people are just thick. We call them rhino hiding it, where they aren't taking their shots. I will amp up a little bit, but not a whole lot. If you get to the point where you're like swinging for the fences, you probably need to sit down. You're a little too upset. From there, I always ask the person, hey, did that hit? If that doesn't work, go to a Reeve. If that doesn't work, just showboat on them. Just style on them so bad until they have to take the shot, because everyone who's watching know it hit. Just make sure that your shots are clean enough to where no one can question them, and then you're pretty good from there. So that's what I do if I am fighting someone and they aren't taking their shots. I feel like maybe they might be cheating or they're not. I kind of go through this process. I change the factors that I have control over to make sure that I can still have fun while still being safe in the game that I'm playing. If you enjoyed this content, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. My name is St. Goddard. We'll see you next time.